I'm Mike Heelis, I'm a rehabilitation engineer. I work in the NHS, particularly in posture mobility, so wheelchairs, seating, and also some prosthetic work as well. Wheelchairs are always being advanced in terms of aesthetics as well as functional form for patients. The needs of patients increase year on year in terms of what they expect and what we expect from equipment for them. So the design has changed over the years in terms of seating, wheelchairs, accessories that go with them. We see novel approaches to wheelchairs and wheelchair-related issues. So previously we've ended up making very bespoke things in our own workshops as one-offs. Now we see a lot more equipment that's available that's off the shelf and can be directly fitted and applied. That means much better design from the outset rather than designing just one-offs. It means you do get standardisation, so you do get, and cheaper as well. So all these add to the benefits that patients receive from having novel ideas coming through. Wheelchairs need to do a balancing act, quite literally. You need wheelchairs, particularly manual wheelchairs, you need them to be able to tip up for clients, their carers, to be able to get up and down curbs, for instance. But you don't want the chair unbalanced so that the chair tips over inadvertently, causing injury. Similarly, electric wheelchairs, there's a balancing act with them because you need the right amount of weight over the drive wheels to have effective driving, traction for driving and for braking. Is for certain situations, the balance of the wheelchair can be affected. That might be by the proportions of the patient, the client sitting in it, the user, or it could be the equipment. They may have special seating, they may have critical care equipment, oxygen cylinders, ventilators mounted on them, or a combination of these things. For those clients, the custom and practice method of assessing how tippy and safe it was to use a ramp, literally for the client to be sat in their chair and to be pushed up a ramp in clinic to actually test the tippiness of the chair. Now this could be distressing for clients, and particularly clients may not be able to give their consent for this. And also represented health and safety issues for the clinicians who are doing the test work. There has been work done in the past on measuring the centre of gravity by having load cells or scales that measure the weight under each wheel, measure the weight distribution, and therefore calculates the tippiness of the chair. And lots of people have done this, but it's all been done independently. Pockets of people around the country and abroad have done this. And before, it's never been done as a joined up way, and that's what this project was about. It was about bringing together at least 3 different areas that had done this work independently to see what can we do better, how can we move this forward. The 3 partners in this project, in Birmingham, King's London and in Wales, they made their own sets of scales and load cells and software. But essentially it was done by rehabilitation engineers, by ourselves in the field. So it was never done as a kind of design concept, from concept through to finished product. It was done very much with rehabilitation engineering hats on, if you like. So I imagine that designers would be able to come in without preconceived ideas through having done work through customer and practice like we may have done, that they would be able to really strip the project back down to the design brief and look at it afresh, present a range of options that might be possibly taken forward to give the whole thing a fresh new impetus. The project brought together designers, engineers, rehabilitation engineers, therapists, as well as researchers from the university. So we all brought together our expertise, our knowledge from our specialities. For that, we did take it back down to basics. What were we trying to achieve? And of course, the designers were then able to start to introduce concepts, forms, shape, how these things could work. And doing that then sort of challenged us in saying, well, yes, it's not how I would have made it, but actually, does it work? Is it better? Will it have better acceptance for the clinicians who will have to use it and for our patients who would be assessed with this? In practical terms, it ended up with a lot of flip charts, lots of sketches, lots of drawings, but those evolved onto concept sketches, moved on to concept models, starting off with, say, cardboard models, foam board models, moving up to wooden models, so that we could start to experiment, play, look at how this might work. And the more that you did that, the more you were able to refine the ideas, see what did work, didn't work, from each of the angles, both from the form, but would it actually be able to facilitate the electronics inside of it? Would it work? Could it be folded and put into a car, for instance? So each stage just took the concepts further forward from just being drawing board onto the practicalities, and was it taking the project in the right direction? Then that's when we started to bring back in our experience. So it was good to have designers who didn't have preconceived ideas, weren't indoctrinated in years of custom practice, but then we had to look at it and say, well, with our knowledge, would this work? So it was a challenge to us to say, well, it was challenging the way that we've done things before, but then we've got to pinch ourselves and say, well, actually, does it work or not? So, for example, we needed our system to be a platform sitting on the floor. It needs to be a certain height off the floor, because at some point you have the front wheels of the wheelchair on top of the platform, the rear wheels on the floor, to actually do a test with the chair very slightly tipped, as if you're going up a shallow curb. But you need to get the chair up on top of the platform. And we're trying to reduce the amount of manual handling that's going on. So in a way, we did need a kind of ramp, a lead on to the platform. But we didn't want to make the platform bigger. We didn't want to start ending up something that you added on ramps to and make it larger and ending up with it being heavier and folding up. So it was a need to kind of look at design ideas around incorporating a sort of ramp as well as the other load cells that we needed into it, and keep the whole form, the form factor the same, looking for this very kind of compact, very neat, very clean looking solution. For the software, the previous versions have been written that used Windows that were designed to perhaps go onto a laptop. The whole concept was originally around having touchscreen, something very clean, simple to use, something that a clinician could just hold in their hand whilst moving around in the clinic room. It also moved on to having it not just dedicated to one touchscreen, but to be able to use on multi-platforms. The kind of next stage of thinking was around who's the user. We recognised that we'd have a range of users, from clinicians who may not be using this very often, perhaps through to clinicians who are using it every day and wanted more sophisticated features. Previously, we recognised if you put lots of sophisticated features onto a screen, initially it can look confused and it doesn't lend itself for usability. So we were looking at ways of how can we make the software work for both people who use it very regularly and people who use it more occasionally, without ending up with having lots of different versions of the same software. So we ended up by using a sort of Metro-style GUI on the software, which hopefully just revealed what you needed to know. So as you kind of work through the initial kind of screen, it would only show you the things that you appear to need to want or need to use, rather than presenting everything at once. But for the experienced user, those things hopefully would be coming up quick enough so they weren't hampered by looking at an empty screen and not knowing where the features were. So what this project was doing was, before the customer practice was to put people push them onto a shallow ramp and feel the tippiness. Now that was a practical, demonstrable sort of method, but it didn't really give any feedback. It didn't actually tell you very much about what you could do. So for a practical tool, maybe it's demonstrable, but it had a lot of drawbacks. With this method, you can measure where the centre of gravity is. Knowing that, the software can then start to do some modelling for you. So you can think about what would happen if I moved the wheels. Previously, you would have to move the wheels and then do a retest, which takes time. With this, you can model the effects of moving wheels or moving just the seating relative to the wheelbase. So you could do that. You could model the effects of mounting an oxygen cylinder in different places. All these were possible just in software. And so when you came to redesigning, remanufacturing or adapting the wheelchair and its accessories, you're doing it with a very high degree of confidence that you're going to get it right. The project was very worthwhile. We did end up with a product that worked, and it's been shown at conferences and very well received. And it's a product that people are very interested in and would like to have. So it was a success from that perspective. The journey to get there obviously has got lots of hiccups, as we were finding, so technical issues that need resolving, where we found that we needed to be beefing up the design in different ways, either through literally beefing it up to make sure it would stand the knocks and bumps, or that it would actually perform as we had intended. And when you start to move obviously from the drawing board onto the physical form and physically start using it, starting putting wheelchairs on it, starting doing the testing, for ourselves, we were tweaking it to make sure that we were happy with it before we did full user trials. Our project concluded. It came to the end of its grant period, and we reached the point where we were able to produce working models or the concepts. That was the target for the grant. The next stage, hopefully for the future, is to find an industrial partner to go into production with this. It's a large market and it's a small market. It's a large market. There's a lot of wheelchairs out there, but it's also a relatively small market in terms of the number of manufacturers who are sort of directly involved. So it's kind of a mixture of the two, and we're dealing with a product that's you're going to buy a few for your clinics. It's not a disposable item, so it is more of a kind of capital investment to run your clinics. So it's also trying to work out the volumes, and which was also an important part about how it was going to be made. It was working out how many might be made, how many a manufacturer might be looking to make. I don't think we'd have ended up with the projects how it came out in the end, unless we had designers there with their input. I was using materials that certainly I hadn't used before. I don't think I imagined we'd end up with the product that we did come up with. And along the way, not only did we come up with the product that we've been showing, but we've come up with a whole list of new concepts of where the product could go next, how we could actually make it better or move it forward, how it could be developed in the future. So that was very useful to have because in talking to manufacturers who might want to take up the manufacture of this, we can show them there's a product path. It's not just a single product, but in fact it can generate onto more developed products for a maturing market. We've not used 3D printing before. And through this project we did use 3D printing, used it for the manufacture of some of the parts on the actual clinical trial models, also used it to make small scale models of the concepts to use at conferences for showing people. And that turned out to be very useful, to have something that would just take out your pocket and show some of the full working model at that sort of scale. So the idea of using 3D printing and what it's capable of is something that we'd like to explore further. I can see benefits, and you do see benefits. You see a lot of changes in health products as they come through that, having done this project, I can perhaps see that how other products work as well, how they've changed over the years, how wheelchairs have changed over the years, how other pieces of equipment have changed over the years. the most striking example I can think of is of defibrillators. So years ago when I started my training was that defibrillators were only used by qualified medical personnel. Now we're being trained on defibrillators that have been designed so that any member of the public should be able to pick one up and use it. Its design, its form, the way it works is such that should be that easy. And the same is true of a lot of other healthcare equipment that we see. That's what once was perhaps a very specialised piece of equipment has now become a run-of-the-mill piece of equipment, a standard piece of equipment, and it's being made easier to use, fabricate along the way, and cheaper too.